49ers quarterback Brock Purdy made his return to the San Francisco 49ers at training camp. He was not perfect throwing the football, but you know who was? Rookie kicker Jake Moody. And what did Kyle Shanahan say about Sam Darnold? All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock here with you at BD Peacock on Twitter. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. We appreciate you. If you want to be an everydayer, just make sure you're subscribed up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And big ups to everybody who's jumping in live right now on YouTube as we're ending the week here with a live episode. As you can probably tell if you're watching on YouTube, Eric Crocker not with me today. He's actually driving out to California so he can be at training camp with me Sunday. We'll get our eyes on all of these players and let you know our firsthand thoughts about what we see on the practice field in Santa Clara, which is going to be a whole lot of fun this weekend. If you see Crocker or I there at training camp, make sure you say what's up. We love meeting with the listeners and seeing everybody in person. So that's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. Brock Purdy, that's the big story. Brock Purdy is back. He is on the field for the San Francisco 49ers. Some good and some bad, and probably some very expected rust on the arm of Brock Purdy to start the day. And the best report you could get about Brock Purdy is that the velocity looked pretty much the same as it was pre-injury. I mean, that is huge for Brock Purdy and huge for the 49ers. We know that he passed his physical, and he said in the press conference after practice that he felt like 11 on everything he needed to do, all the throws he needed to make in team settings, 11 on 11 settings, he would be able to do. And he showed that with his arm on Thursday at his very first practice back after the injury. So that is a huge sigh of relief to know that he's probably not losing any velocity on his fastball from what he was as a rookie. So that is huge and a big milestone in the recovery for Brock Purdy from his torn UCL and his elbow surgery he had in February, less than 5 months ago, and he's back on the field and making throws and letting it rip, man. I love that. The confidence too, because it's one thing to come back and, okay, surgically repaired elbow, my arm is good, I feel fine. And then you're like, okay, but let's not go too crazy here and dink and dunk your way through practice. He let it go. He was throwing it out there and even overthrowing some players, as he said, maybe needs to get on the same page with these guys. And I think it's probably just a timing thing, right? You would expect some imperfection in your first practice back, the first time throwing at that speed with full speed receivers in an 11 on 11 setting, and even on 7 on 7 settings in an NFL practice. But the very good news is Brock Purdy is back, passed his physical a couple of days ago on the field for his first practice, and velocity was good. Arm is healed. Arm is in very good shape, it looks like, for Brock Purdy for the 2023 season. And let's hope it stays that way for him. And now, we've talked on this show how we don't like the training camp stats. Third string All-Pro says, did Purdy look like his velocity was good? I mean, I wasn't there. All reports and, most of the videos that the 49ers put out are like slow motion videos. So you can never really get a good grasp of it from those. I did see some other videos of the warm-up portions, and by all reports, velocity looked good. Velocity looked great for Brock Purdy. So that's absolutely huge. Now, he wasn't exactly on fire, though, throwing the football. And so I am going to drop some stats from training camp practice, even though I don't love stats from training camp practice, but just kind of, a little context here for Brock Purdy. While he was letting it fly, maybe he wasn't exactly pinpoint in his first practice back. According to, I'm going to go with Nick Wagner of ESPN's stats, as some can differ sometimes between different reporters and different people who are in attendance to training camp practices. Brock Purdy took all 21 reps during team drills with the first team offense, as Kyle Shanahan said he said he would. Brock Purdy was QB1 in his return. He took all of the first team reps in 7-on-7s and in the 11-on-11 team drills. Overall, in those reps, he had 17 throws, and he was 3 of 10 passing with an interception during the team drills in 11-on-11s, a little better, 5 of 7 in those 7-on-7. And by all reports, multiple beat reporters, including Nick Wagner here, seem to have all of the same arm strength that he had before the injury, which is fantastic news. The biggest news, the best news that we're looking for in practice number 1 for Brock Purdy isn't necessarily, what his completion percentage is that the arm is intact, and it looks to be 100%, which is fantastic news. How about them Niners says Purdy was throwing 50-plus yards today. Yes. And look, I'm not going to make any big generalizations about the arm talent needed in the NFL, how far a good throw is in the NFL. Throwing 50 yards for an NFL quarterback is good. For the layperson, that's big time arm. For an NFL quarterback, they can all throw 50 yards. Jimmy Garoppolo, we saw throw 50 yards. So it doesn't mean he's a Henry Roland Gardner over here, as Kyle Shanahan talked about with the rookie of the year and having this crazy arm. He could throw the ball 50 yards in the air before. There's a lot more to it when it comes to arm strength with certain types of throws, off-platform throws, where you're at with your body working this way. Can you make this throw? Can you throw it late? Can you out-throw coverage? Can you do this? Can you drop it in where exactly you want to with the velocity, with the distance? So there's a lot that goes into just, how far did he throw the ball? How hard did he throw the ball? So he's going to work on those things, and we'll have further reports for you on how Brock Purdy looks. But the fact that the arm is good and looks to be 100% healed is huge. I mean, that's all you can ask for right now for Brock Purdy is camp just gets rolling and he has his first practice. All of Purdy's reps with the starters. So that's one thing that, there wasn't any shenanigans with Shanahan and trying to sneak Trey Lance or sneak Sam Darnold in with the ones. It was all Brock Purdy with the ones, which meant Trey Lance and Sam Darnold took turns with the 2s, and then Brandon Allen worked with the 3s. When it comes to Brock Purdy, yes, he was a little bit rusty, and everybody that was on hand said pretty much that was the case. And he's his first practice back. He didn't get a chance to go through OTAs, and I'm sure just the speed of the game and how different players run routes, he's going to have to kind of get used to that again. And he talked about it with one of the interceptions he threw and missing deep balls, overthrowing, in fact, Deebo Samuel and Juwan Jennings. And Juwan Jennings is a 4.7 guy. He's not the fastest guy in the world. So it's more timing. It's more just, and I'm sure we'll see it much different tomorrow. What's interesting, though, is when it Uncle Shaggy wants a Locked On hat, Locked On 49ers hat. We do not have any Locked On 49ers hats, unfortunately. In fact, this Locked On hat that I'm wearing while I'm doing this podcast right now was given to me by the network, and it is a one-off. It's the only one that I have, so I can't mess it up because then I won't have any Locked On hats. But we're working on that. We're working on that to get some swag for all the listeners out there. Appreciate you checking in with the live episode, Uncle Shaggy. Okay, so Brock Purdy, let it rip, a little bit rusty. That's the story there with QB1 for the 49ers. Now, QB2, QB3, QB4. I think there's some storylines there from today. There was a Joe Burrow injury. Brandon Allen's old team. He was the number 2 to Joe Burrow. Might the Cincinnati Bengals come calling? Reports on what it looked like for Trey Lance and Sam Darnold in their second practice of training camp. And kind of an unbelievable statement from Kyle Shanahan about Sam Darnold. All that and more coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed fits for your roster. So with draft prep underway for the upcoming season, let's see who Vinny has picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And actually, I'm going to go to Joe Burrow here because when the top-tier quarterbacks are off the board in fantasy football drafts, there's another line of luxury passers who are guaranteed fits for your starting lineup every week. The Bengals Joe Burrow remains a classic pick in the top 6 QB1s with his prolific reliability in an offense with great weapons he knows so well. Burrow will get it done again, humming along to big numbers in Cincinnati, as long as he is healthy. And if anybody out there knows, I saw it was a calf injury. Let me know what the latest is on Joe Burrow's injury. Did not look good, him falling to the ground untouched in training camp practice Thursday. With eBay Guaranteed Fit and over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride is running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights. I already ordered a fender flare for my vehicle. You can find it all at eBay Motors, and they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what part you need for your vehicle the first time. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, I'm going to get into the chat a little bit here. So let us know what you think about practice and what you think about what's going on with 49ers training camp here in the early going, if you're with us on YouTube right now as we go through this one live. And I see a lot of folks jumping in here and fired up about the San Francisco 49ers. SJ there's a lot of folks wanting some gear for Locked On. SJ Sharks fan says, has the network ever thought of doing merchandise? It's a revenue earner. That's been the problem, because I've asked about merchandise because the listeners have asked about merchandise, and that was kind of the response I got is like, yeah, it's kind of a money loser for the most part. So I don't know. They don't think it's a revenue source, or else I'm sure the network would be all over it. But maybe I can make them. Maybe the 49ers listeners can be the test case. Be like, let's try it with the 49ers listeners. Have a feeling it might be a revenue center for some of the fans out there that like to tune in every day here. And we appreciate you so much, all the everydayers out there. Ferocious Gentleman says, Brandon Allen trade? I'll take a 4th for him. Hey, I don't know if you'll get a 4th for Brandon Allen, but depending on the injury for Joe Burrow, and look, right now, if you're the 49ers, this is an interesting one because it's so early in training camp. And the Cincinnati Bengals might be looking at this saying, well, we need another arm to get through camp if our number 1 guy just went down, even if he's not out, even if he's just going to miss a couple of weeks, they need another camp arm, right? They could go to some undrafted free agent that's still on the street right now, but they might look at the 49ers, and the 49ers might be saying, man, Kyle Shanahan just had his first practice with all 4 quarterbacks. And Kyle Shanahan might be thinking like, this is rough because I can't find enough reps for all these guys. I kind of have one too many quarterbacks when they're all practicing. But then there's days where Brock Purdy's going to be off, and then maybe you do need those other 3 guys. And then if you trade away Brandon Allen like early in camp, like today, what if there's an injury? Now you're down to 2 guys. And on an off day for Brock Purdy, you're down to 1 quarterback again, right? So I don't think the 49ers can trade him right now. But towards the end of camp, or about the time, let's say second preseason game-ish, when Kyle talked about there was a couple weeks of pitch count for Brock Purdy, once he's beyond that and he can practice every day, I wonder if at that point the 49ers might be willing to trade one of their guys, and maybe the Bengals would come calling for Brandon Allen. I don't think the 49ers would get a 4th for him. Brandon Allen was available late in the process in the spring. But, something like a 7th round pick, even if it's a conditional 7th round pick, I have a feeling one of those quarterbacks is going to get traded at some point in August. I don't know if it's going to be Brandon Allen. I don't know if it's going to be Trey Lance or Sam Darnold. It depends who comes calling, what they're offering. And it might be a conditional 7th round pick. It might be next to nothing. But I have a feeling I would put money that one San Francisco 49ers quarterback of the 4 does get traded before the season starts. NorCal says Lance is going to ball out, already layering throws over linebackers just like last year QB1. It's going to be tough, man. With Brock Purdy back, showing his arm is back, that's another check mark for Brock Purdy, as long as he doesn't have a setback. As long as he's not disastrous 3 of 10 every single practice, right? And Trey Lance looks amazing. But according to most reports, I think Sam Darnold might have struck back a little bit today. And that Darnold might have looked the cleanest of all the quarterbacks. So yesterday, day 1, it was Trey Lance. He did look like a QB1 on practice number 2 with Brock Purdy back. Brock Purdy not firing yet on all cylinders. And most onlookers thought that maybe Sam Darnold won the day. And when it comes to Sam Darnold, there's one aspect of Sam Darnold. It's like, okay, who is Sam Darnold? What is he? What is his body of work? We've seen him play a lot of football. He's played 10 times as many games as not 10 times as many games. He's played what, five times as many games as Trey Lance and Brock Purdy combined. It's kind of wild how much more football he's played, but he's never played. He's not played a lot of good football. There's a nice highlight tape for Sam Darnold, but not a lot of good all 22 film. If you're just watching play after play, year after year for Sam Darnold, no matter who his team was, his coordinator, any of that, he's in a much better spot team and coordinator wise right now. But Kyle Shanahan, his coordinator, said something very interesting to, I believe it was Mike Silver. And this from Mike Silver says, Kyle Shanahan spoke highly of Sam Darnold's potential when I talked to 49ers head coach Wednesday. How highly? This is the quote from Kyle Shanahan about Sam Darnold. Quote, I mean, Steve Young took a while to get going, and he's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I don't like to compare anyone to Steve because of how good he is, but why can't Sam be like that? He's got that type of ability. He is that type of person, and I'm just pumped that we could get a talented guy like him here. That is really interesting. There's so many questions here I have with that. Why would Kyle Shanahan go straight to Steve Young? There's a lot of quarterbacks that floundered and maybe got a little bit better in their career. There's one in the division right now in Geno Smith, and he's the guy I've compared Sam Darnold to. Could Sam Darnold be Geno Smith? A highly drafted player, not quite as high as Sam Darnold, but he was thought of as a first-round guy, went high in the second round. Sam Darnold and even Steve Young, they sat for a while, right? So this isn't Sam Darnold's had 12 practices in shorts. Now he's fixed. Now he's a future Hall of Famer, right? Or now he's even a starting NFL quarterback. Steve Young, it took him a long time because it took him a while. And once he got to a really good organization, the San Francisco 49ers, under a great coach in Bill Walsh, and Mike Shanahan was around Steve Young. It took him a while even then. And then finally he was ready to go. And he didn't really get his Hall of Fame career going until he was 30 years old. And that's what we saw with Geno Smith last year with the Seattle Seahawks. So even if, let's say, wildest expectations and Sam Darnold becomes a really good NFL quarterback, that's not going to happen after 12 practices in shorts. It's just not. And if Sam Darnold, like, just even invoking Steve Young's name, like, I get the point of, okay, why can't he get better like that because he's talented and they believe in the person? Sure, that's fine. But Steve Young still, that's something that's pie in the sky. Probably never happen again. That's a special circumstance. Now, Geno Smith, that could make some sense. But even then, you're talking, okay, Sam Darnold sits in 2023, watches what the offense is supposed to look like, soaks in the coaching, forgets bad habits, comes back, goes through another offseason, has an opportunity to play some preseason games, maybe is even forced into action, starts a couple of games. And now in 2026, after he's lost a lot of bad habits and learned a lot of new good habits, been in a system for a couple of years, 3 years, now sitting behind another quarterback, watching for a while, having a lot of practices under his belt. You're a new man, you're a new quarterback. Okay, maybe then he can have a Geno Smith-like season. And who knows, maybe even in a miraculous turn, he could become the next Steve Young. And by the way, he's not as gifted as Steve Young as a runner. And Steve Young was just a precision passer too, and Steve Young was super smart and clearly could read the field. And that's where I'm not sure about Sam Darnold, because every single first-round quarterback in the history of the game that was a bust or that wasn't very good, you could say the same thing about them. Oh, he's a really talented guy. He's a really talented guy. How come Jamarcus Russell couldn't stop drinking scissor and become Dan Marino, because he's that talented of a thrower. Why couldn't he do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons why a lot of quarterbacks don't become great, and physical ability isn't one of them. So we'll see what Sam Darnold ends up looking like for the 49ers, but clearly Kyle Shanahan likes him, and he's spoken well of him. Now, there's been, like we mentioned here on the podcast, there's no reason to believe that Kyle Shanahan likes him more than anybody else, even though clearly he's talking. But there's no indication on the field yet, as in, like, okay, he's mixing in. Like, if Sam Darnold was mixing in with the ones and not Trey Lance, then I think we would have a conversation, be like, okay, and maybe that's kind of Kyle Shanahan's plan, and he just hasn't gotten there yet. But rep 1, first team, OTAs, that was Trey Lance, not Sam Darnold. Rep 1, first team of training camp, that was Trey Lance and not Sam Darnold. Now he's mixing in with Trey Lance, right? And they're clearly battling for something. But Kyle Shanahan has to be telling people something, or else you wouldn't have people like Chris Sims, who's his buddy, who they have each other's names tattooed on their ankles. I think it's their ankles. That and on the PFT podcast, host Mike Florio says the vibe coming from the team in San Francisco, this was today, I think, the vibe coming from the team in San Francisco, that Sam Darnold's QB2, Trey Lance is QB3. And Chris Sims says, yes, that's correct. That's not happening on the field at practice. That's not the reality. So if that's happening, it's because Kyle Shanahan knows it's inevitable and he's planning to do that. And he's like, hey, Chris, I'm going to eventually, it's kind of like, I'm going to make this happen now, or I'm going to make this happen later. Right now, I can't show it and I can't put Sam out there first, but eventually Sam's going to go out there. And we believe that he's going to be the guy because we don't believe in Trey Lance. And that's the big question I always have, is like, why would you just completely not believe in Trey Lance? And maybe there's more that we don't know, and I'm sure there is. If that's the case, that we'll find out. But interesting little wrinkle there. And Kyle Shanahan clearly does like Sam Darnold. But as far as what's happening on the field, it is not reality that Sam Darnold is ahead of Trey Lance. It's just not. And maybe that will change. And maybe Kyle Shanahan is already predetermined and it's going to change soon. We will find out. All right, next I'm going to get into the chat a little bit and talk about this kicking competition. What about the kickers out there? Jake Moody and Zane Gonzalez, both perfect at practice on Thursday. Next. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Appreciate all the everydayers out there. You can be an everydayer. All you got to do is subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. All right. Looking at the chat here, NorCal says, tell Kyle Shanahan to play Madden online to practice fourth quarter 2-minute drive game simulations. I think there are some simulations that can help. And I know they go through some of those, I think, in practice. And he's got someone in his headset that helps him out with certain things. But there's so much going on for Kyle Shanahan on game day. I think they can have a better game management situation. And clearly it's one of the things, like, Kyle Shanahan obviously is a smart dude. His scheme is crazy good. Everyone in the league's trying to run what Kyle Shanahan is running. He knows how to get people open. He's got the NFC Championship with quarterbacks that are lesser than other teams are going out there and winning games with and winning Super Bowls with. And maybe that's why he's been held back from winning a Super Bowl, because of the quarterback position. Maybe Brock Purdy's that guy and he's back and his arm's good and Niners will be rolling there for a while. But game management, fourth quarter, when to kick, when to punt, when to go for it. There's been some, clearly some front office moves that have been head coach driven, that, you're just not playing the percentages well at all. And that is clearly one of the things he's struggled with. And nobody's perfect. There's things that Bill Belichick, the greatest coach of this generation, struggles with. He's put together a bad roster for the most part. The debacle, any other head coach would have gotten fired if they did what Bill Belichick did last year. He's a Hall of Fame guy. He's a Mount Rushmore coach in the NFL, and fireable offense what he did last year with his offensive coordinators and all that. And now he brought back Bill O'Brien, realizes the error in his ways, but he has so much leeway that no way he's going to get fired, right? Even if ownership's starting to be like, come on, Bill, what are we doing here? You can't just go screwing around. He's got half his family on the coaching staff. And Kyle Shanahan's not perfect either, right? There's things he could get better at, and we'll see what that ends up looking like. And I think that that 2-minute drive, fourth quarter type stuff, game management, that's not his best. Is not his best. He's not. I don't want to say he's bad at it because he'll never be good at it. I think he's maybe bad at it because he's doing too much himself. He needs to delegate a little bit more. I think it's one of the times he can. Someone's in his headset. Boom, this here, and helping him out, because it's not you can't game plan for it. He's so good at game planning. You can't game plan for 2 minutes like you can your first scripted 15, 25 plays. So it's something that he's going to have to get better at, I think. West Coast 57257 says, I'm taking Sam Darnold very seriously in all caps. I mean, you have to take him seriously. He's a talented guy, and clearly the organization likes him enough to have brought him in. Do you have to take him so seriously that you think he's going to take a snap this year if Brock Purdy's healthy? Probably not. Do you have to take him seriously enough that Trey Lance might get passed up on the depth chart by Sam Darnold? Yeah, I think you have to take him that seriously. He should. I mean, he started 55 games in the NFL. He should look like a veteran compared to Trey Lance, who's played 4 games. He should. And if he's not clearly that better from right now, then what are we even talking about, right? So that's something right there, because when I hear the quote from Kyle Shanahan about Sam Darnold, maybe he's the next Steve Young. Why can't he be that? I'm like, why can't Trey Lance be that, right? He's more physically talented than Sam Darnold is. So I don't know. The whole thing is just weird with Sam Darnold. And somebody's obviously talking, because all these national reporters are acting like he's already won the QB2 job, even though if there was a depth chart that was written down, and it's written down somewhere, like somebody told somebody, hey, Trey's going first. Trey's ahead of Sam Darnold right now. Maybe it's inevitable. Maybe it's just all a sham of a competition between Trey and Sam, and we'll find that out like next week, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, Sam Darnold's the guy, right? So I don't know. This is Jerry. Is it Jerry? Jair says, do you think it's even possible that Trey can beat out Brock during training camp and preseason? Or is this a situation where he will have to wait for his opportunity again by an unfortunate injury to Brock? We talked a little bit about this yesterday with Croc. It would have to be like Trey is amazing in camp and preseason and good enough to really wow everybody and make everybody aware. The players are like, oh man, okay, Trey's different right now. This is different. And Kyle Shanahan has to stand up and take notice of it. And Brock is just bad and continues to be bad and is just not quite the same guy coming back from injury. That's probably what it would take. It'd have to be great versus really bad. So much so that everybody who's in attendance at camp, all the players know it, all the coaches see it. That's probably what it would take. It's not impossible, but I think it's really, really, really unlikely that a healthy Brock Purdy is beat out by anybody at training camp. And obviously an injury could happen at any time to any of these guys. And that would absolutely change the equation. And that's kind of the other part of this is we expect one guy to win and he's going to start 17 games. It doesn't happen for the 49ers. I'm expecting all 3 quarterbacks we're talking about, and whoever's not traded away, and maybe Brandon Allen gets cut, somebody gets hurt, he gets brought back and still ends up starting some games for the 49ers. I wouldn't be shocked at all if there's another 3 starters this year in the regular season for the 49ers. It's just the way it's gone. And so the backup job is pretty important. I don't know if the third job is as important, which is why I think Brandon Allen might end up with the third job and either Trey or Sam does get traded. Kazoku says, will Trey Lance be traded before week 8? The trade deadline is a tough one. And looking back, and really, I said this at the time, actually, when the Niners traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, I thought it was weird to do a deadline trade for an impending free agent? Because how could you end up, he's got to come in and kind of learn the system. How could you even know enough to know what you're going to do with that impending free agent? And you're giving up a second rounder for him. I guess a lot to give up for Jimmy Garoppolo to start mid-season learning your playbook from a different system. It wasn't like he was a Kyle Shanahan tree guy and then came in and made it a little easier, knows the terminology. Completely different. And then Garoppolo goes crazy, and you got to pay him $130 million. Becomes the highest paid player in the NFL based on what he did over 5 or 6 weeks. So it's hard for a team to make that trade. And if they do that with Trey Lance, are they going to pick up a 5th-year option after they trade for a guy and have to teach him a new scheme? Unless it's somebody that already really knows Trey Lance and believes in him, that's been around him already from the 49ers staff, like the Texans. But they just drafted the guy, so it's not going to be the Texans. The Titans drafted a guy too, so I don't think it's going to be them. So I think a team would trade for Trey Lance early and hope to get him ingrained in the system enough to make a decision about him this year. Once he's on the roster, week 8, I think it's much less likely that the 49ers trade away a quarterback. I think it's a before the season, preseason move if the 49ers do trade one of their quarterbacks. Now, the 49ers might be buyers at the trade deadline, and they haven't been shy about doing that either. So maybe that's the direction the trade deadline goes for the San Francisco 49ers, being buyers. All right. Thanks, everybody, for jumping in on this live edition. Brock Purdy is back. We will continue to look at all of these players at 49ers camp. Croc and I will be there giving you our firsthand reports. We'll tell you how the ball's coming off Jake Moody's foot. He was 5 of 5, according to Nick Wagner, in his debut at practice. Apparently, they didn't kick any balls on Wednesday, so they were waiting for Brock Purdy to come to practice before they started kicking the football. Jake Moody good from 33, 38 twice, 43, and then hit a 51-yarder that apparently cleared the uprights easily to wrap up practice. Zane Gonzalez, he's already losing this competition. Moody got 5 attempts. Zane Gonzalez only got 1, but he did hit it from 41 yards out. Basically, this is, look, if Jake Moody falls on his face, we got Zane Gonzalez. If Jake Moody's okay, it's Jake Moody's job. 5 for 5 in his first practice kicking in front of some fans and media and the rest of his teammates. Thanks, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen. Croc and I back after we get our eyes on training camp this weekend. Talk to you then, right here, Locked On 49ers.